Yes, perfect.
Okay. All right. Now I'll stop. Stop sharing.
Okay, we are live. We'll just give another minute for our attendees to join. We already have around 25. Thank you for those who have joined the webinar. We are just giving a few more minutes for the attendees to join, and we'll begin in just a minute. Okay, I think we can start. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening from whichever part of the world you're joining us. I welcome you all to the 12th webinar session on the TAFSSA webinar series. And this time the webinar is titled, Who Does What Within the Household? A Novel Tool to Measure Gender Roles in the Agri-Food System, which is coming from the evidence from our district level assessments in Bangladesh, India, and Nepal. The webinar is scheduled for 1 hour, where we'll have presentation for around 20 minutes. Then we will have our discussants coming in with the remark, and then we'll have around 20 to 25 minutes for open Q&A. Request all of you to keep on typing your Q&A, all the questions that you have in the Q&A box, and we will take up the questions during the Q&A and open discussion time. If we have time, we'll also request you to come in and ask your question live by unmuting yourself. So without any further ado, I would like to invite Tim Krupnik, who leads a multidisciplinary and multicultural research team at CIMMET. He has worked in agriculture research for development in Asia, Sub-Saharan Africa, and the Caribbean. Over to you, Tim, for your welcome remarks and setting the context.
Thank you and welcome everybody. This is the 12th TAFSSA webinar that we've completed and is one of the main pathways that we use to disseminate the research work that we do and to show that work to our colleagues and our stakeholders. I'm very excited for the presentation that you will have today because it's one of the more novel and unique things that we have done within TAFSSA and focusing very strongly on gendered activities within households and nutrition and diets, which are themes that permeate throughout the Transforming Agri-Food Systems in South Asia, CGIAR Regional Integrated Initiative. TAFSSA, or as I just mentioned, is essentially an agri-food systems initiative. We've designed this such that we work across India, Nepal, Bangladesh, and to a lesser extent in Pakistan, looking at issues from production through markets and value chains, from where food at the farm gate that farmers produce moves through value chains and supply chains to consumers through retail and food environments, and then ultimately where we also look at consumption systems within households. We support this by representative data collection that goes into quite some detail in key locations that the initiative works in throughout the countries that I just mentioned. And we also look at trade-offs in environmental and climate adaptation consequences of those conditions. Today, Neha will be presenting very novel work and new methods and approaches that have been developed to look at who does what within the household. And you might be asking, why is that important? It's important, of course, because we know that not everybody wins in development processes, and the initiative is focused on aspects of transforming agri-food systems with an ultimate goal of seeing that nutritious and healthy food can be sustainably produced, supplied through markets and to households on an equitable basis. But we also know that achieving equality within households can be challenging because it's confronted by different cultures, preferences, and approaches, hegemony within households that changes the way that behaviors are illustrated within households, and so on. So this work takes a deep dive looking into that. And again, I'm very excited to see what Neha and colleagues will be presenting today. This is also crucially important because the data and evidence that will be shown, it's not just what we're doing here in presenting it in a webinar, but the team in TAFSSA takes special effort to make sure that this information is communicated very strongly to policymakers and is also embedded in the activities of large-scale NGO and nutrition programs as two primary pathways to impact. That the research that is being done can be used to inform policy and activities of large-scale change agents that are working in the production to consumption continuum, and specifically with respect to sustainable and healthy diets within households. So with that, I will stop there and again say welcome and thank you to everybody as well. My colleagues will also put some links in the chat with respect to where you can find information on the TAFSSA website, and a number of different research notes, publications, papers, and information and knowledge products that have been generated that are on subjects that are similar to this and all aspects of the agri-food system within South Asia. Thanks again, and Neha, over to you.
Thank you, Tim. And now I would like to invite Dr. Neha Kumar, who's a Senior Research Fellow in the Nutrition, Diets and Health Unit at IFPRI. She's an economist by training and has an accumulated expertise that spans the diverse sectors of agriculture, social protection, gender, and nutrition-focused programs. Neha, you have 20 minutes for your presentation.
Great. Thanks a lot. Thanks, Tim, for the introductory comments. As Tim mentioned, I'll be presenting on a tool that we developed as part of the TAFSSA's local agri-food systems assessment survey, where we capture who does what within the household. This work is quite relevant in the context of Claudia Golden's work on women's labor market outcomes, which was awarded the Nobel Prize in Economics last year. So just going a little bit into the motivation. We know that division of labor within the household follows traditional patterns where men and women have very different but complementary roles. For example, domestic chores are performed disproportionately by women, and women work longer hours than men. And this pattern starts early in life. It starts in childhood and it's carried forward for the rest of their lives. Women's work burden, or as it is referred to as triple work burden, has implications not just for their own well-being, but for the communities as well. And it has been linked to nutrition, but not sufficiently studied. And the current evidence on time poverty usually focuses on one or two individuals, usually spouses within the household, which doesn't give a complete picture because we don't capture everybody, how everyone contributes within the household. And as we know in South Asia, it's not just a man and a woman, but it's the whole household that's actually part of what a household does. So we set out, when we started designing the survey for the local food assessment, local agri-food system assessment, we wanted to develop a simple tool to assess how household tasks are allocated across different members within the household. And we wanted to step outside just what's performed within the household, but also look at what agricultural tasks people are doing, how they are taking their produce to the market, so capture everything that a household might be doing. And we wanted to use this tool to answer a few research questions. So the first one was, to what extent do men or boys and girls, women or girls, contribute to different household tasks? How do task allocation patterns vary among tasks related to agriculture, food preparation, and caregiving? And how does task allocation differ in households with and without adult males? So in large part of South Asia, we have cases where men out-migrate to cities to do the work and leaving behind households without adult men. So we wanted to tackle that aspect of task allocation as well. Just a little bit about the tool. You've heard us say many times, it's a novel tool. Yes, it's an innovation that we developed as part of the TAFSSA assessment. It was informed by field work. So we did consultative visits across Bangladesh, India, and Nepal to develop this tool. And this fieldwork was crucially important to develop this tool. It revealed that sharing of tasks is not just between men and women, but there's a complex nature of these task sharing even within female members of the household. So we had to go beyond just looking at men and women and go within a household. How are these tasks being shared even across women of different ages and status? And then it takes a different approach to the usual time allocation module. It has a year-round recall. So it asks about what other different tasks a household did over a period of a whole year rather than about the 24 hours, which is what is the case. And we asked them about who are the primary and the secondary task performers. We also allow for hired help because there are a lot of tasks that are actually performed by hired help. And then this helps us understand the household dynamics, right? So the data provides insights into the division of labor within households, not just between two individuals, but across the full spectrum of household members. So I'll dive right into the module since I don't have a lot of time. So these are the different modules. So this lists out the household agricultural tasks. There are about 19 of these tasks that we asked to the primary female respondent in each household. We asked them who does the following task, and they could either name one person who was primarily responsible, two people who shared the task, and then they could also say if this task was performed by hired labor. So these are the 19 agricultural tasks. We also asked them about food preparation related tasks, and then on maintenance and care related tasks. So we had a total of about 50 tasks that we asked about, and we have that very rich data, which I'll show in a minute. So these graphs currently show the agricultural tasks performed by household members, and the graphs on the screen are by country, so Bangladesh, India, and Nepal. And these graphs are showing how these tasks are done. Are they performed by one member? So that's the dark purple part of the bar. The lighter purple is the equally shared, and even lighter is when one member is doing it with hired help, and the teal is hired help only. So we see that there is significant sharing of tasks within households across all the countries, little less in Bangladesh, but pretty similar across India and Nepal. And then if we want to look at how these tasks are shared between male and female household members, this is the graph that is showing this. So the yellow portions are tasks that are performed by only male household members. The purple is when the task is shared equally between a female and a male household member, and the blue bars are where the task is only performed by female household members. So just if we look through it, we find that in Bangladesh, men undertake a high percentage of tasks related to crop cultivation and taking produce to the market, and women perform tasks related to livestock. In India, there's considerably more sharing of tasks between men and women. And in Nepal, we find that that a lot of the tasks are actually being performed by female household members, which might make sense because in Nepal, there is a lot of households where the men have outmigrated. So it's a lot of female households with a lot of that don't have men. This next graph shows another way in which we can present the data that we collected. So since our data is linked to the roster, we know exactly how old the individual is, who's performing this task, their gender. So in these graphs, we show the tasks that are performed by adolescent girls and boys. And we find that adolescents' agricultural task involvement is relatively low for all countries. So they're not doing a lot of agricultural tasks. What we also see is that the girls' involvement is higher compared to boys, particularly when looking at livestock-related activities. And girls' involvement in on-farm and market-related activities limited, especially in Bangladesh and India. So similar patterns emerge among adolescents, as we saw in the overall picture that I presented earlier. Now, just looking at the same graph, looking at food preparation tasks that are performed. And this here, we are looking at how these are again one member and equally shared, and we find that here overwhelmingly it's done by either by one member or is equally shared. There's very little hired help that's doing food preparation related tasks. And then going into more detail of how these tasks are performed, comparing male household members equally shared, and then female household members doing these tasks exclusively. And we see that, again, yellow represents male household members' involvement, which we see is primarily where it's around going outside the household, so purchasing perishable or non-perishable food, or obtaining fuel for cooking. Everything else is primarily performed by women. And again, we look at this again with just focusing on the adolescents, and we find that adolescent girls are much more involved in most of the food-related tasks compared to adolescent boys in all three countries, and with exceptions of tasks that involve going into the market. So as I mentioned earlier, these patterns of division of labor, they start early in life and they are perpetuated as people grow older. We also did some analysis looking at households that had male adult household members compared to those that did not. I'm not presenting any graphs here, but just summarizing what we find. We found that in households where adult males are not present, it leads to increase in women's agricultural workload and overall reliance on adolescents, particularly adolescent boys in Bangladesh and India. And there's increased reliance on adolescent boys for external purchases and performing food preparation tasks that are typically dominated by women and girls. And this trend is observed in all three countries. And we also find there's significantly more reliance on hired help, particularly for on-farm and home repair activities. So just a few comments on using the tool. It's really quick and easy to implement. It took us about 4.5 to 5 minutes to administer in all three countries. You can do a lot of interesting analysis with it. I showed only a very few graphs that one can create. So you can link the data with the household roster to identify who within the household performs each task, which can lead to a lot of interesting analysis. Instead of just looking at the dichotomy between men and women, you can actually see how tasks are being shared across the household members. To reflect a little bit on the value and potential uses of the tool, it's easy, as I mentioned before. So something that Tim alluded to in his opening remarks is that there's a lot of, if we want to get equity, we need to take action. But if we don't measure it, then it's even harder to take action. So I think it's accepted as social. So we know women are doing the lion's share of work when it comes to food preparation and all. But unless we put a number on it and capture it, we can't really move any further and try to address it. There's great potential for adapting, scaling, and using this tool to understand widely. So understand gender dynamics throughout the agri-food system, as we know how different tasks are divided between men and women. and also evaluate the impact of gender transformative interventions if we were to include such a tool in these impact analysis. And then also something that we can do is to evaluate the impact of engaging men, which again it's a understudied topic currently. I'm not sure how much time I have, but I'm going to briefly talk a little bit about how this compares with a long-standing time use module, which was developed as part of the Women's Empowerment in Agriculture Index module, which collects data on how a primary woman and her spouse spent time over the last 24 hours across different activities. So it captures it has a 24-hour recall compared to our tool, which is on a year, 12-month recall. And ours is only capturing who does what. It doesn't capture time. So whereas the VEA tool captures amount of time spent. So we did some analysis to look at how these two tools compare to each other. So this graph here is showing using the TAFSSA TAFSSA instrument that I just presented on, and the VEA, which is using the time use module, to look at participation in different tasks across the between the two surveys. And what we find is that the patterns of male and female involvement are pretty consistent across the two tools. What we pick up with the TAFSSA tool is that we pick up the equal sharing of tasks, which is not something that is part of the VEA tools, but we pick that up in ours. And then we look at some estimates using the VEA tool to look at how much time is spent by men and women in different tasks. And we find that even when women are engaged in certain agricultural activities, they're not actually spending a lot of time in those activities. And women spend much more time on food preparation and or maintenance tasks compared to men.
Neha, you have 4.5 minutes left.
Oh, good. I'm good then. Thanks, Isha. So just to conclude, in general, the two tools show similar patterns of engagement, so participation in different tasks and activities, but something that comes out is that sharing of tasks across household members is not captured in the standard 24-hour recall time allocation module, which we do pick up in the task allocation module. They do capture different information which comes through. So tasks versus time, as I just mentioned, the recall periods are quite different. So the TAFSSA module asks about the last 12 months, whereas the time allocation module asks about the last 24 hours. So there's these both can lead to different kinds of biases, and the coverage is different. The TAFSSA tool covers the entire household, whereas the time allocation module only can capture two individuals, which it is an extensive tool. It's expensive also to administer. So I think looking forward, it would help us if we can implement both these modules on the same sample over a period of time to kind of capture some of these seasonality issues, which don't get picked up if you're only capturing data at one point in time for a time use module. But at the same time, what we don't capture is the time. So I think looking for ways to find common ground and maybe develop an even better tool which captures both. And I think this is my last slide. So I'll stop here. These are my co-authors, but it's a much larger team. And the survey participants who answer all our questions are the real heroes without whom we cannot do any of the work that we do. So I'll stop here. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Neha. We have already started getting questions, and Avinash is already answering some of them. Before we go into the Q&A, now I would like to invite our discussant for this presentation, Dr. Professor Uma Koirala. Professor Uma Koirala has experience in university teaching and research in the areas of nutrition, food security, and gender and social inclusion. Professor Corella is a postgraduate scholar at Ghent University, Belgium, in food science and university management planning. She has served as an executive committee member of the Global Scaling Up Nutrition Movement, and she's also a member of independent expert groups for Global Nutrition Report, GNR. Over to you.
Thank you, Isha. Thank you for your kind words, and thank you, TAFSSA family, for giving me this rare opportunity to participate in this webinar. The issue who does what within the household is long-going issues and debate. The topic of the webinar is the same, so I'm quite excited to hear all the things. And thank you, Neha, for your wonderful presentation, which covers many things that are roaming around in the gender debate and gender transforming situation and all the debates. So thank you so much for bringing up these issues through the webinar and through the research. These topics are quite crucial, especially for the researcher and policymakers and program implementers, and also an ongoing concern to identify workload, gender practice, and impact of transformative acts done by policies and programs throughout the days since long. So thank you for all these things. Going through the presentation, I have some thoughts in my mind, especially targeting to the tools that are really going to draw out some concrete data set and conclusion. As you already presented, the tools are rightly developed to answer the research questions. The tools covers the work sharing patterns of both male and female on the task areas that are prescribed as agriculture sector, food preparation, and caregiving areas. The tools are quite smart and less time consuming and can apply frequently to monitor and assess the changes over the time. So these are the fantastic thing that comes up through the tools. Having said these things, also I request to think about some of the issues that can be covered by the tools. As we normally who are working in the gender issues and working for the research on gender topics, we are more focused on qualitative research, which can draw actually was the feeling and was the say of the both genders. So the tools, I found the tools are absolutely quantitative, where there are no space for bringing gender thoughts or views, thinking, or arguments on the performing tasks, whether these are preferable by the person or not. So there should be some space while assessing the while measuring the gender transformative role in agri-food system. We need some sorts of qualitative analysis too, so that it can add value on the result we draw out. Similarly, we have a lot of norms going on in if we go through the gender analysis. So I didn't find any tools to measure gender domain of care and household chore practices, such as who is able to do those things and you should carry out those things. That is quite different things, you know. One says the compulsion, another is voluntarily. So how can we measure those things and bring out those things while sharing the task in the same meantime? So these are quite crucial from the gender perspective too, and how we are programming gender transformative role in agri system. So similarly, one thing is quite crucial in, I think, the self-care mechanism. If the self-care mechanism is quite important to increase productivity, motivation, and income in the same time. So this factor plays a pivotal role to transfer agri-food system in its optimum. So how can we fix these things? How can we draw out these things from the person or community to incorporate in the policy or in programming, so that we can energize the people for transformative work? So these things we need to think. Another some sorts of activities are missing, I think, in a minutely going into the tools. I didn't find milling activities, because it is time consuming and equally important too. You better know what is the milling activities of rice, maize, millet, whatever the cereals, pulses we produce, and oil seeds and spices. We need to milling it, and it is quite time consuming. And who is performing these things is missing. And another agricultural tax is pig or pork or hog farming also. This factor is also missing in the tools, in the indicators. I mean, so these are the things I pointed out. And another thing is quite crucial in the gender transformative role, the decision-making role or influential role of the person. Who is the decision maker, and whose decision is count in the family? How could we measure in the whole research? So this is quite important, and this is quite crucial too for transformative process in agri-food system. So we need to think about those things. And another thing I want to add is we always talk about the three important role of the woman, gender role, productive, economic, and community role, reproductive, productive, and community. But nowadays we also add a leadership or political role of women. So how could we measure those role? Those role is quite important to in the sense of mobility also. How the tax give them permission to move from home to outside arena to perform their leadership or community or political role. So I think these are my quite quick observation about the tools, though the result of the tools are quite interesting. The sharing of role, gender role, transformative role, and how the things are going on through the period of times. And the Nepal result shows that there are lots sharing a task by both men and women is quite enthusiastic to make a showcase in the dashboard. So thank you very much for giving me this opportunity.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Koirala. Now we have time for Q&A and open discussion. Avinash has been already answering questions in the Q&A box. I would like to invite Avinash to moderate the Q&A session. Avinash Kishore is a senior research fellow in the Development Strategies and Governance Unit in IFPRI's South Asia office. His research focuses on understanding how public policies and markets affect the adoption and non-adoption of sustainable technologies and practices in agriculture in South Asia. Thank you, Avinash, and over to you.
Thanks, Isha and Neha. Neha, there has been a lot of questions. I tried to answer some of them while you were presenting, but all of them may not have been adequate responses. The first thing, Isha, is the request for the tool, the protocol, and the data. So I've just posted that we will post the links to tool, protocol, and the data. It's available for anyone who is interested in the chat box. There are a number of methodological questions, Neha. So Emma, why don't you go ahead and ask your question? Just unmute yourself and please go ahead and ask your question. Shipra, I'll come to you next. Shipra Jha from UNICEF. Yeah, thanks.
Thanks, Avinash.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I think my
introduce
question
yourself
was,
just in a sentence and then ask your question. Thank you, Emma.
I'm Emma Kargi, working at Simit, Nepal, based in Kathmandu. My question now was, how was the task of preparing and delivering food specifically for hired labor captured? Thank you.
Thanks. Neha will collect 2-3 questions and then you can answer. Is that okay with you? Okay. Can we go to Dr. Shipra Jha and the team from UNICEF? You had a series of questions. Maybe you can ask the 2 most important ones and then we can come back again. Shipra?
Shipra, you can unmute yourself. Okay, maybe Avinash, do you want to ask the question if it's in the Q&A box?
So there was a question on, again, the time. Let me see, because I've answered. So one question is there data collected on childcare, and do we know about best practices on how to collect time spent on childcare by women and others, Neha? That's one question. The other question is, they're working in Madhya Pradesh in India. So is there any resources for that, if I understood the question correctly? And the other set of questions were about data methodology and comparability across the 3 countries. Does our data allow comparison across countries? That's the third set. I'll come to more questions. Neha, why don't you answer these and then we'll come back to more questions.
Great, thanks a lot for all these questions. I'll start with the last one, which I think is the easiest. So yes, the data is completely comparable. So we use the same tools in the 3 countries. We also use the same sampling strategy. So, they are all, we can absolutely compare what we find across the 3 countries. Coming to Shipra's question on childcare. So yes, we do ask them who takes care of children. So I think there was questions around taking care of children, taking care of sick children, feeding children. So we have these questions on who's doing it. And we know who is doing it. What we don't know is how much time is spent on doing it. So we don't capture time. And then coming to your question, Emma, how do we capture hired labor in the context of food preparation with a 12-month recall? So so the way this information is captured is similar across the different activities. So for each activity, we ask them who in the household primarily does this task. And we did not allow them to say, well, it's done by 10 different household members. They had to think about at most 2 individuals within the household who may be doing these tasks. And if it's performed by a hired person, then they could say that. So sometimes the tasks were primarily, or they were only done by hired labor. This was, linked to maintenance tasks. But if it was shared, they could say, okay, it's shared between a hired labor and somebody within the household. So that's how we captured it. I think it comes up only in Nepal that they have some hired labor contributing to food preparation tasks. We didn't find this in India or Bangladesh. I hope it answers your question. And then Avinash, can I quickly respond to some of the things that Usha mentioned?
Please go ahead.
Yeah. Okay, great. Thanks a lot for your comments, Usha. I think you literally hit the nail on its head. So we do need a lot of qualitative work. What I did not present, but we did collect data on, was perceptions of leisure. So we asked women how much time they had for leisure activities, how much time they were working. And overwhelmingly, women are time constrained, right? But we also asked them their perceptions about this. And they were pretty happy about how their time was spent. So, which is perplexing for us, but at the same time, I think it's really important important to understand what goes on in their minds. It's like if they're cooking, it's just something that they do and they've been doing for generations, and it's just it's out of whether it's voluntary or compulsion. And I think we do need to understand some of the norms and the qualitative. We need some more qualitative work to understand this, and even to design policies, we will need to do a lot of qualitative work to understand what is going on in these communities, within these women and men, and how can we make changes, or do we need to make changes, and how these changes need to come about. Again, a really nice point about self-care. I think that's really important too. I don't think that concept exists in the rural setup, but it should, I think. But again, we should not be imposing anything. Maybe more of a discussion with individuals. Just one more point on decision making. So we did collect data on autonomy in decision making and on mobility. And what you were alluding to is something that we are actually working on. It's a paper that we are working on. Hopefully we'll have it by the end of this year. So I'll be very happy to share that with you. But that's definitely something that we are working on currently. So I'll stop here. Over to you, Avinash.
Thanks, Neha. Then there are a set of survey methodology related questions. So Dr. M.A. Karim, do you want to go ahead and ask your question? If you can unmute yourself. Dr. Karim? Or is it Engineer Karim? If not, I'll just read out the question. There were questions on what's the size of the household, where were the interviews taken, and what type of people participated in it: farmers, laborers, businessmen, poor, etc. This is the question related to methodology. The second question, there was a second question that is deleted, but I think it still is relevant, is how were the surveys taken? I guess the indication, Neha, were the other people listening in when one person was being asked question. So can you just clarify those? Yeah, thank you. Go ahead, Neha. Those two first.
Thanks a lot. I don't remember exactly how large the households were, but I'm going to take a guess of about 5 to 6 individuals. But we have our data notes that are available online. We can share the links, which has a lot of details on household size. In terms of who participated, these were all rural households. So people living in villages participating in agriculture. So they could have a small agribusiness, but primarily they were all agricultural households. And the surveys, to the extent was possible, were done in private. So there were no people. The training was to ensure that no outsiders were listening in. But the way these surveys take place, I don't know if this was completely avoided, but that was the training that we provided to the enumerators. Thanks.
Neha, there were other questions that I tried to answer, but it would be good if you can also explain it. Did we analyze differences in the task division across rich and poor households, or other axes of heterogeneity, meaning upper caste and so-called lower caste, etc., those kinds of things? Yeah.
So thanks, Avinash. We haven't done that yet. So my guess is that we don't have a very diverse set of households on those particular aspects, especially socioeconomic status, but we can definitely look at it. We haven't looked at it yet. What we are currently doing is comparing, as I mentioned, looking at households where women have more autonomy. Are they, how is that linked to how tasks are divided across households? and the such. But we can look into the asset levels as well. So trying to capture the socioeconomics and
Thanks.
also caste. I don't think we have looked at that.
A related question again on, I think, survey methodology is that in cases where hired labor is used, did you look at how much of it was, what percentage of it was female versus male hired labor?
So we don't, yeah, thanks a lot. We don't ask about that. So all we know is it's a hired labor. We don't know whether they're men or women.
Thanks, Neha. A couple more questions. There's one question from Dr. Bhanu Parajuli. Is that what do you think are the short-term and long-term policy implications or policy messages coming out from this work?
So I think the immediate message that comes out from here is that there's a lot of, there's task sharing in agricultural tasks. So we know that there's a lot of task sharing in agricultural activities, but when it comes to food preparation related activities, it's primarily done by women in the household. So anything that comes up, policymakers need to be cognizant of that fact. So also as researchers, we need to be cognizant that, we might tell households, well, you need to eat healthy, but then who's actually preparing that healthy food? And make sure that if, we need to facilitate that eating of healthy foods. So, accessible, it's affordable, it is less time consuming. So, have some access to some other mechanisms which are often not present in rural households. And of course, increasing awareness about these task burdens, and also how can people get healthier food on their tables in an equitable way. So
Neha, another survey methodology question. There are a lot of those because I think you presented the tool, and that's very encouraging. Is that did the methodology or this tool consider the role of other household members, meaning members other than the ones interviewed, particularly in the context of a patriarchal society like India, especially in Bihar, where extended family structures are more prevalent? Specifically, it would be helpful to understand how these members influence households with migrants. This is a question from Rosalind Geeta Ingersoll.
Yeah, thanks for the question. So the module is administered to the primary female respondent in our survey, but the way it's administered is we ask the woman who within the household is performing this task, and the household, all household members are listed in the roster. So, for each task, they actually have to say this particular member is performing this task, or these two individuals from the household are performing tasks. So we know exactly who within the household is performing this task. But this is only the household as is defined by a household. So, however we defined it. If you're talking about extended house families that are coming in to help, they will probably not get captured in this. But a household as defined, everybody who's within the household will get captured.
Thanks, Neha. There are a couple of questions on, is there any plan to collect similar data from Haor region in Bangladesh? Because there the rules and norms and society communal systems are very different. And there's a second question on, was there any specific region for selecting these three areas, meaning the districts we chose in Nepal, Bangladesh, and Bihar?
Avinash, I didn't catch your last part of the question, sorry.
The second was, why did we select these 5 districts that we selected for TAFSSA integrated household service?
Maybe you're better placed to answer that
Yes,
question.
I will.
I'll just say that we don't currently have any future plans for administering, but we are looking for opportunities to do this in many more contexts, so we can really validate the tool and actually develop it, make it better, and include all the activities that Usha also mentioned we missed.
So thanks, Neha. Just to add to what Neha said, so what we are trying to do is to share all our tools and modules, entire survey, the data, etc. And we encourage any one of you who are present in those areas or are working on those areas, please feel free to use your tools let us know if you are using your tools, but you don't need our permission or anything. It's out there. It's a public good. Anyone can use it, even if we are not able to. This also is the first round of a survey. It was trying to pilot a way to do an integrated food systems survey, where we look at high resolution data, including intra-household data that Neha presented. And our idea is that people will find it interesting. Policymakers and other stakeholders will find this kind of approach useful. And this method, there will be more resources available from governments and other interested institutions to support this kind of data integrated survey or specific tools that was used in this integrated survey to use in other districts and other parts of South Asia and the world. That's our goal. And we want to do it more actively. Was there any specific reason for selecting these particular geographies? Yes. So these surveys were done as a part of a large CGIAR integrated regional project in South Asia. And we collected this data in areas where our colleagues who work on agronomy and farm science, etc., were doing some implementation projects. So we just aligned ourselves and covered these districts. We could do only 5 and not more, also because we were trying to pilot and we were resource constrained. But it is our ambition, it is our desire to bring more areas and to try this out in other parts of South Asia and maybe other parts of the world too. Neha, there was a question again from the UNICEF team. They're not able to unmute themselves on, are there any best practices on how to provide women support for childcare facility, especially for women who are engaged in agricultural labors? This is not related to this tool, but generally, if you are aware, can you share anything on that?
So I wouldn't go as far as calling it a best practice, but there is some evidence that shows that having a childcare center or creches or the Anganwadi center, like if they provide a safe environment for the child, they get food there, they have cognitive development is good because they interact with other children, also with adults. So that has, and the food is there and it's a clean environment. So that has shown to have positive impacts on the children in terms of their nutrition outcomes. And also, if the mothers are leaving their children in these centers, then they have an opportunity to go out and participate in the labor market. So I think this is a good example, but again, with a caution that they should be well equipped, they should be well run, and they should actually have these positive benefits to the children. So that's one example that I can think of.
Thanks, Neha. I think you have answered all the questions that were typed in Q&A box, but we still have some time, Isha, right? So please just unmute yourself if you can and ask your question straight to Neha. And yeah, Neha will be answering those questions.
Yeah,
So
we do
any
have
other,
7 minutes.
sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I'm saying people can raise their hand because I'll have to give them the permission to unmute themselves. So if you have any question, please raise your hand and then we'll give you the permission to unmute yourself. There are no raised hands as of now, Avinash.
I don't see any. Purnima has physically raised her hand. So go ahead, Purnima.
I guess some advantages of being on the panelist group in stealth. Anyway, I just wanted to say thanks to everyone for very insightful questions. I think what's exciting here is that we have the ability to very efficiently understand at least a first pass of some of these dynamics. But what's really crucial is that in development interventions, we think about what are the innovations that can actually, change the dynamics. Is it sort of really male, female, joint efforts around reshaping gender dynamics? Is it that, we deliver services like childcare support to basically reduce the burden on women? Is there a joint effect of doing the two of those things? I think there's a lot for us to really contend with. But for me, the bigger, the big lesson that, for example, comes out from this work is that we are clearly living in a world where 50% of the population, which is the female population, is literally feeding 100% of the world. If you look at what's happening, in terms of the internal dynamics, and that's something that has to change. We have a lot to understand in terms of whether this dynamic contributes to more unhealthy diets. If we change the dynamic within the household, can we actually improve the healthfulness of diets? Because then, more people in the household are sort of pitching in terms of assuring healthier diets. So we haven't fully connected, all the dots, but I think we need to really think about the outcomes that the gender equality itself is obviously an outcome, but we think it has big implications also for delivering healthy diets, and we think there's room for sort of designing and testing innovations on that front. So especially for those people here who are thinking about interventions and programs, if this inspires you to think differently about an intervention that might reshape internal household dynamics, I really want to encourage you to reach out to us. We'd be very interested in collaborating on impact evaluations or implementation research and things like that. So I just wanted to sort of add the nutrition and diets angle to this side of things as well. And I see someone else actually has their hand as well now.
And Isha, there is a question from Marie-Christian Monnier. Can you help her unmute herself?
Yeah, she's
And
already
she can
unmuted.
ask you. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Marie,
Thank you.
please go ahead.
Can you hear me? Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. And thank you very much for this interesting presentation. My question is a little bit different. I'm not focused exactly on the gender distribution of work, but as from the World Agriculture Watch perspective, we are considering the family and the production system as a system. So the farm, and we are especially focused on the description of family farming, family farms, trying to make typologies in order to support adapted policies and investment strategies. So in that, because you have done your survey on an enormous sample, I was wondering in which extent it would be possible to work again on your data, especially about agriculture. So I had a look on the web page very quickly, and I've seen the presentation, the analysis, but it's not enough. Would it be possible to access directly to the raw data? And because and I was also asking myself, how was your entrance point? Which was your entrance point for the selection of the respondent? Did you try to categorize the farms, I don't know, by size or by statute? Because you have a great number of landless farmers. And you are reporting only about the owning of land, but how can somebody produce without land? So people they have access to land, even if they don't own it. So this kind of, so just to say that I would be very happy to collaborate, even if we are out.
Thanks, Marie. Neha, you want to answer it? I can help supplement part of your answer. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. I think we are looking for collaborators, and we would more than welcome you to use our data and license. Yeah. So I don't think everything is on the web what we've analyzed, but yeah, you're more than welcome to work with us.
Okay.
Yeah, just to add to what Neha said, Marie, yes, we'll be happy to share raw data and collaborate on the analysis. On the sampling part, the way we approached it, we don't have a stratified sample. In rural areas of the districts where we studied, we did a house listing and then randomly selected both farm and non-farm without any discrimination. So our sample, I can't tell you off the top of my head what percentage are landless farmers, but if there are landless farmers in this district, they also got captured. Non-producing households also got captured, though I can tell you that across the 3 regions, almost every household, like 90+% of households, were producing at least one commodities, including livestock and other producers. So it should be possible to create some typologies if there are frameworks available, etc., because we have very rich set of data on these households. And to add to that, apart from what Neha presented, we have data on household characteristics, plus their access to market and other such things. So I hope it answers your question, and we look forward to further correspondence with you to explore partnerships and ways to do this work together. Tim.
Avinash, just to respond, I was trying to find a way to raise my hand, but I couldn't.
Right.
To respond to this question in particular, of course, it's very close to my heart. It is a representative sample, so all of that information is in the raw data set, and I'm having trouble posting things in the chat, but colleagues, please do place the open access data set link online, because all of the data is open access. It's been published. It's being downloaded a lot and used quite frequently. We'd be very keen to continue discussions. Also in Bangladesh, the same data sets were matched with a far more detailed farming system survey that we did in a number of locations that we have also, with another CGIAR initiative, used for developing household typologies of farm production systems as well. So the data sets are linked and can be interoperated as well. So please do shoot an email to us and follow up, and we continue the discussion and the collaboration. Thanks.
Okay.
Thank you. We are on time, so I'll hand it back to Isha. Isha?
Thank you. Thank you so much, Avinash. Thank you all of you for joining the webinar and staying with us for the entire 1 hour. We will be presenting data from the other modules from the survey, the TAFSSA survey. So stay tuned for emails from our end. And if you're interested to collaborate, you can drop us an email and we will get back to you. We do have your emails because you registered, so we will send you the recording of the webinar and all the material that we have, the open access data, the data notes, and all the other materials that we have regarding this survey over email after the webinar. And as I said, if you are interested to collaborate, you can please respond to that email and we will get in touch with you. Thank you so much for joining, and see you next month with our findings from other modules from this survey. Thank you. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks,
Thank you,
everyone.
Viraj.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.